Good day, friends. This is Pastor Virgil Humes coming to you with the Checklist for Life from New Hope Baptist Church here in Wayne, Michigan. From the Ultimate Handbook for Timeless Wisdom and Foolproof Strategies for Making the Most out of Your Life's Challenges and Opportunities. Today, I want to talk about loving difficult people. Loving difficult people. Jesus says in Matthew 5, verses 43 through 44, Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you." In most classic works of fiction, in most books, the bad guys are pretty easy to discern. They're the people in the dark colored suits or the dark hats or the characters with the permanent scowls or smirks. But what about the enemies in real life? In your real life, they may or may not seem quite so devious, but you know who they are. Picture one of your enemies right now. Then take this challenge. Love that person. It's not an easy assignment. Yet Jesus teaches us in the Gospel of Matthew that you are to meet that challenge head on. Jesus said, turn hate upside down. It's important to note that Jesus didn't say love evil. He said, love people, even those who despise you. If you have a tough time with this challenge, you're not alone. You're not by yourself. The people of Jesus' day didn't know what to do with Jesus' love your enemies commandment. It's likely that this sort of radical thinking contributed to the eventual backlash that ultimately sent Jesus to the cross of Calvary. The Jews had been looking for someone who was a dynamic leader, someone who would soundly defeat their enemies. Instead, they got a radical who taught them to turn the other cheek and to love people who hate you. How can you love someone who hates you? The first step is to recognize that all people are created in God's image. That's right. All of us are created in God's image. God values each and every person. Each one of us, He does. Then try to understand why this person is your enemy. Perhaps he or she is being malicious or simply misdirected. Could it be that you did something to cause hurt? Seek to know what drives the wedge between you and that person. If it's within your power, do all you can to remove the wedge. Look for common ground. Enemies are usually formed out of a disagreement in one particular area of life. Put aside that issue for a moment and look for things that you can agree on. Focus on these areas in your relationship, those areas that you can agree on. Consider distancing yourself. Sometimes you need to separate yourself. If there's no reason to be in a relationship with that person, stay away from situations that could be troublesome. Love from a distance is easier than love is in the middle of confrontation. Pray for this person and for wisdom know how to relate to him or her. Only with a measure of God's love is it possible for you to love your enemies. God's love can look beyond the hurtful actions and into the possibilities of the heart. It can fill in the gaps. That is, love can fill in the gaps in your own ability or inability to love. Again, loving difficult people. I have 3 affirmations for you. The first affirmation is, I will examine my heart to see if there's any hate in my heart. Secondly, I will know that God's love is big enough even for people I have a hard time loving. And thirdly, I will prayerfully consider how I should approach those whom I call enemies. And then I have 3 assignments for you. The first thing I want you to do is ask God to fill you with love for difficult people. Secondly, discuss with a friend the challenge of loving someone when you don't condone their actions. And the third thing I want you to do is come up with 1 or more ways you can practically show love to an enemy. And here's a passage of scripture for you to remember in Romans 12 and 20. Romans chapter 12, verse 20. And it comes from the New King James Version. The Lord said, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If your enemy is thirsty, give him a drink. For in doing so, you will heap coals of fire on his head. And here's a quote as I close out, a couple quotes for you from St. John on the Cross. He says, Where there is no love, pour love in, and you will draw love out. And the second quote is from Paul Tillich. The first duty of love is to listen. The first duty of love is to listen. God bless you and God keep you.